Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria simulator has a lot of hidden objects that are normally not visible to the player. Most of these were used during development of the game to test certain features. Some are used to make the game actually function, however we also found some that were meant to be in the game but were cut before the final release. In this video, we'll try to explore and explain most of these hidden objects. First, let's start with the blueprint mode scene. When looking outside of the visible play area, there is a hidden box with 9 buttons. These buttons actually had a purpose and are still somewhat functional. It seems to be a cut feature that allowed the player to switch between rooms. Once you upgrade the first room, all nearby rooms become accessible. Unfortunately though, this feature doesn't seem to be finished, as every attraction placed seems to transfer to all other rooms. But I guess it's still cool to see that Scott had more in mind for this game before releasing it. Next, we have these 2 unused plus buttons labeled Make Stage and Make Stage 2. Unfortunately, these buttons are non-functional, so we can only assume they were initially meant for placing stages. By the way, have you ever noticed how all the attractions disappear and reappear when you place or remove one? Well, there's actually a fun little thing happening behind the scenes that causes this. When you place or delete an attraction, all attractions are first removed. Then a big invisible purple line is spawned that moves across the screen from top to bottom. Every time this line passes over an attraction spawn point, the correct attraction is spawned in its place. It seems very unnecessary, but there's actually a good reason for this. See, whenever you spawn an object in this game engine, it is automatically set to appear in front of all other objects. And because of how all these attractions are laid out, the bottom attractions should overlay the top attractions to give you the effect of, hey, this attraction is in front of the other one. Still, it's a very unnecessarily complex system, but it works. Catalog mode doesn't contain many interesting objects, however there is one that caught our eyes. When looking above the visible play area, there is a set of stars that were cut from the game labeled Lives. We don't think the name really means anything considering it's the default name for the object type used. However, these stars do change based on the selected attraction. Do you have any idea what they might have been used for? Let us know in the comments. The Lemonade Clown and Fruit Punch Clown minigames were made pretty lazily, because if we look above the visible play area, we can still find Helpy, or more specifically, the Helpy from the Balloon Cart minigame. Helpy is still somewhat functional in both minigames, it just seems like Scott didn't bother rewriting all the code and copied most of it from the Balloon Cart minigame.
Tell anyone about this and I cut your throat.
Next, let's break down the interrogation scene. This scene is fundamentally controlled by a series of hidden counters. For this deep dive, we'll only focus on the 2 major players, the only counters that control the progression of the interrogation. To help you understand how they work, we have moved them into the game view so you can watch their values change in game. The first counter is the audio control counter, which stores the main progression of the interrogation. It starts at 0 where nothing happens. After 2 seconds, it moves on to progression 1, the first introduction.
Congratulations on completing your first day. However, your job isn't over just yet.
Because this introduction is only meant for the first night, it is skipped for all following nights. Progression 2 is the step where you get told to make a choice, and progression 3 is where you get to actually make it. When you choose to throw the animatronic back into the alley, the progression is set to 4, otherwise it's set to 5. For whatever reason, progression 5 is just a bridge to progression 6, where the first audio prompt starts. Once the audio prompt has finished, the game won't move on to the next progression unless you have opened the checklist in the past 10 seconds. The same goes for all the following audio prompts. Progression 10 is the last audio prompt, after which progression is set to 11, which plays the completion voice line.
You have completed the maintenance checklist and may proceed with the salvage. Well done. End tape.
Once the completion line has finished playing, the screen fades to black. The second counter is the aggression counter. This counter controls the state of the current animatronic. Before we get into its behavior, let's take a look at what aggression actually does. The aggression meter ranges from 0 to 1200. Its value affects the displayed animatronic, which has 3 stages. Stage 1 starts at 0 aggression, Stage 2 starts at 250 aggression, and Stage 3 starts at 500 aggression. It also affects how loud the aggression noise is. Each animatronic has its own aggression noise. For reference, this is the sound Molten Freddy makes, William Afton, Scrap Baby, Lefty. The noise is muted until 750 aggression, where its volume is set to 3%. Once the aggression meter reaches 900, the volume is set to 5%. However, there is an exception for William Afton. At 750 aggression, his heartbeat volume is set to 40% and 50% at 900 aggression. This is probably due to the fact that his noise blends a lot with the ambience, making it hard to hear anyway. Once the aggression meter reaches 1000, do not pull up the checklist, unless you want to come face to face with whatever is sitting right in front of you. You could also just wait until the meter reaches 1200 aggression, at which point you'll receive a lovely hug. Moving on, let's take a look at what affects the aggression meter. Once you decide to proceed with the salvage, the aggression meter starts at either 0 or 100, which is picked randomly. While a prompt is playing, every 10 seconds there is a 50% chance of the aggression meter rising, and the value depends on the night number. You can calculate the increment of value by multiplying the night number by 50 and adding 150 to it. So on night 1 it's 200, on night 2 it's 250, on night 3 it's 300, and on night 4 it's 350. By the way, you actually want to stay away from that checklist. It's only there to distract you because even just looking at it will increase the aggression meter every second. The increment of value can be calculated by multiplying the night number by 10 and adding another 10. When you use your taser, the aggression meter is set to a random number between 0 and 4, multiplied by 100 of course. That's pretty much everything that affects the aggression meter. However, there is one little thing I forgot to mention. When the 4th audio prompt starts playing, there is a 50% chance that the aggression meter will increase to 750 if its current value is lower. Now here's a quick demonstration of the aggression meter during an actual game.
You have chosen to proceed if you feel that it's becoming unstable or aggressive. You can only use it 3 times before it begins to damage the animatronic and decrease its value. Begin audio prompt in 3. Document results. Document.
Now before we move on to the final scene, which is the actual night mode scene, I need to mention that unfortunately most of the other scenes in the game don't contain any interesting hidden stuff, and we did our best to pick the most interesting ones. But don't worry, as an extra we still want to share some cool screenshots of how the other minigames look in the editor. Now to the most important and complex part of the game, night mode. This is what night mode looks like when viewed in the editor. There is a lot going on in and outside the visible play area, but first let's start with the inside. We also made these objects visible in play mode so you can see what exactly is going on while playing. This is the actual map, or rather event layout, and everything you're currently seeing is what the game does behind the scenes. First, the grey boxes obviously represent all the possible locations the animatronics can be at. The dark blue boxes inside some of them are only used as hitboxes for selecting where to play the audio lure. The other blue boxes at the top are the spawn points for animatronics. Their spawn points are randomly picked at the start of the game, after which the spawn objects are instantly removed. All the red boxes surrounding the locations are special zones. These zones indicate absolutely nothing, but I mean they're still in the game, so we just decided to include them. The colored boxes represent the animatronics. The purple box represents Molten Freddy, the green box represents William Afton, the slightly orange box represents Scrap Baby, and the dark gray box represents Lefty. Something interesting to note is that these objects actually make the game function. They aren't just there for show. The game actually uses these animatronic objects to check which room object they're overlapping. Keep in mind, I won't be diving into the exact behaviors of these objects, but if you'd like to know more about how the AI works in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria simulator, you can check out It's Taken's breakdown video on it. Now let's move on to the other red objects on our screen. The small red box above is simply the hitbox for Helpy's nose. The small red box below the monitor is the hitbox for the button that activates the insanity ending blueprints.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of this.
The fun thing about this hitbox is it works no matter what you're looking at. This means if you remember where to press, you can activate the blueprints even while looking at a vent.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of... It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity.
The two big boxes on both ends of the screen don't need much explaining. These are simply the hitboxes for looking around. And finally, it's time to look at everything that's going on outside the visible play area. There are a lot of counters that are simply storing the state of the game, so I'll only be showing the ones that were probably used while testing the game. We moved all the relevant counters into our game view so we can see all of them in action. First, let's take a look at the monotony counter. Starting night 3, this counter counts up every second and resets when you make a turn. It's used to detect whether the player is AFK for too long and lowers the movement opportunity intervals for all animatronics. When this counter value is between 30 and 45, the movement opportunity intervals for all animatronics change to only 2 seconds. But it gets much worse when the counter exceeds 45, where the interval changes to only 1 second. The chance for movement stays the same, but these intervals are still much lower than the default ones, so make sure you don't freeze if you want to survive. The next counter is the risk meter, which is actually very relevant to the counter below named Here's You, but we'll get back to that in a second. The risk meter basically counts up all the noise you're making, which always starts at 1. While the computer is starting up, which takes about 1 second, the risk meter increases by 2. Once the computer is fully powered on, it adds another 2 to the risk meter. The ventilation system works in the exact same way. 2 risk when it's booting and 2 more once it's fully active. Because of this, if you turn everything off, the risk meter will sit at 1. But if you have both the computer and the ventilation system running, the risk meter jumps all the way up to 9. These aren't the only factors contributing to the risk meter. Printing advertisements adds additional to risk, and advertisements themselves also add 2 more risk. Fortunately, advertisements cancel any active tasks, so these 2 can stack up. The highest the risk meter can go is 11. And if you're wondering, the silent ventilation system actually lives up to its name and adds nothing. The next counter named Here's You, which I mentioned before, determines whether the animatronics in the vents can hear you. If this counter is set to 1 while an animatronic is in the vents, you better buckle up, because their next destination is your office. That is, unless you're shining your light at them, which will instead cause them to move back. Every second there's a random chance that Here's You is set to 1, and that chance depends on the risk meter. The chance is the risk meter value out of 10. This means if the risk meter is equal to or higher than 10, the value will be set to 1 no matter what. And even if you have everything turned off, remember that there is still always 1 risk, so even though the chance is only 1 out of 10, you could still be heard. Next, let's look at the counters at the top. These counters aren't super interesting and they simply store the state of the computer. The task stage counter on the left stores which task category is selected. The computer selection counter on the right stores which tab you're currently on. The counter in the top right is the current night number. It's only used to determine the movement opportunity intervals for animatronics. On night 1, animatronics can only move every 8 seconds. Well, kinda, because there are no animatronics on night 1. But that's still part of the code. On night 2, every 5 seconds. On night 3, every 4 seconds. On night 4, every 3 seconds. On night 5, every 2.5 seconds. And on night 6, every 2 seconds. And that's without accounting for the metonymy counter. The last counter is the actual temperature counter. The one you normally see in the game is just text which is updated every time the actual counter changes. The reason for this was probably to transition into red text more easily for higher temperatures. And finally, let's take a look at how these objects behave during an actual game. Enjoy!
I heard your call.
You may not recognize me at first, but I assure you, it's still me.
We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe for more. It's been a while since we made our last video, the complete FNAF 3 breakdown, which by the way you should check out if you haven't yet. But we're back. We also have a new editor who edited this video, so big thanks to Noah. See you on the next one. Hopefully.